Hi guys, this is Matt Smith. I'm just going to go over how to fill out an application. Obviously, every application is a little bit different, but there's some general basic information that's going to be consistent across the board. So I'm going to use American-Amicable as we go through this example. Here's an example of an application that I wrote up for our client. And some of the main points I want to point out are things that are going to get held up. They're going to hold your application up if you don't fill them out correctly. And they're common mistakes that agents make when before submitting an application. So the first thing you want to do once you have your application before you get it submitted is just to make sure that everything is filled out and that nothing important is left blank. So obviously the name and address is important. Social security number is critical. Driver's license, you must have your driver's license if it asks for it. That will hold up the application. Owner and payer, if they're the same person, you can just leave those blank. Primary beneficiary, that has to be filled out. You don't necessarily have to have the social during the application. They can add that later. So, a lot of times you might have a beneficiary where they're at work or they don't know their social off the top of their head. So you can just submit it with the name and relationship, which those are required, is the name and the relationship, but the social can be added later. If they have it, then that does make it a little bit easier to get it pushed through, but that is not necessarily required when you upload it. The plan, some people just put Home Protector here. Obviously, this is a Home Protector app, so that's a given. You want to make sure that you specify what the term is of the Home Protector. So is it a 15-year, or 20-year, or 30-year? And then what is the face amount? These, yes or no questions have to be answered. If you're including any riders, so return of premium, disability, critical illness, accidental death benefit, those have to be filled out right here. Otherwise, when they run those quotes, the price that you're quoting is not going to match up with their finding, and that will hold up the application. You want to select bank draft here. This needs to just kind of be assumed when you're filling out the application with the client. You really want to avoid anything other than bank draft because, well, number one, if it's not bank draft, then you will not get the advanced commission unless it's an annual payment and you collect a check for the whole annual premium. But if they want to do, let's say, a direct bill and they just get billed every month, that is an option, but you will only get paid as earned. So month to month as they pay, then you'll get your commission. So you really want to avoid that. You really want to select bank draft, and that's when you get your advance. So then you want to put your premium here. Make sure you check mark e-check immediately. This authorizes them to draft the first payment, and then you can put the amount again there. And this is up to you on where you want to have this mailed, agent or insured. The only reason I selected insured on this guy is because he is several hours away from me. This was a road trip that I had made to work some leads in an area. Otherwise, I normally select agent so that I can get that and deliver it, and that really solidifies that sale. And then make sure that if you are adding any spouse onto this policy, that information is here. Otherwise, if they don't have that, that will hold up the app. And then obviously these yes or no questions, if they're all no, that makes it very simple. That doesn't usually happen. So a lot of times, let's say they have high blood pressure, you want to mark yes, and then go ahead and circle that that high blood pressure. So let me see if I can get an example of what that would look like. So you can either underline it or you can go ahead and circle high blood pressure. And then down here at the bottom, section B, it says any answers that you answered yes to, make sure you put the question that is answered and then what the symptoms or disease or injury or illness was. So on this example, you would put 2A down here in the notes, and then you would write high blood pressure, and you would put the dates that they were diagnosed with high blood pressure, and then what medications are they taking for it. Also required is the name and address of their physician. So some people may not know the address. You may have to Google that, but you at least need to get the name and the city and state, and then when you get back to your office or your home, before submitting it, you need to look it up on Google so you can put in the correct address. Also keep in mind there are questionnaires for a lot of these, so if they answer high blood pressure, they need to have a high blood pressure questionnaire filled out, and that can be printed off on the application page, which there's a video for that if you need to look at that, on how to print applications. That we do go through how to print off questionnaires in there too. Again, just as you're going through here, if they answer yes, just circle it and put a note on why. Then the next page, do they have existing life insurance? Yes or no? If so, what's the name of the company? This is not that important in most states. You do not need to know the policy number if they don't have that. Some states are a lot more strict about this, and we'll just have to look at that in a case-by-case situation depending on what state you're in. And then their bank information, that's pretty self-explanatory. Signatures are a must on all the signature lines. Your information with your agent number. If you do not have an agent number yet, you can write pending here, and then I would write your social underneath that or beside it somewhere so they can reference you when SFG sends in your contracting paperwork. This is the terminal illness rider, so that would need to be signed. And then the HIPAA form. This is on every application. They need to sign the HIPAA form and date that. And then this is the bank draft information. I obviously whited out some of the information here, but they need to have the transit number and accounting number. Make sure you put the amount that they're authorizing to charge. And then in this area, since this is on a computer screen, I can't show you what I normally do, but I normally, in this area, I put the voided check, and I just tape the voided check right in there, and then when I submit that, they've got a copy of that. Now, if for some reason the person does not have checks and they cannot give you a voided check, then you can call the bank. You need to put the phone number that you called and the person's name that you spoke to, the date that you did that, your agent number, your signature, and then this is the signer on the account, and then date that. And that you can do that instead of a voided check, but that's kind of a secondary if you can get a voided check. And then this last section, draft the first premium upon applications submittal of the application. This is really important to get the client to sign this. This basically means that American-Amicable will draft the first month's premium upon receipt of this application. But what that does is it basically will put the application or the policy in force upon signing of this policy. So if something happens to the client, let's say tomorrow, then assuming that this policy was going to get approved, that policy would pay out, rather than waiting for the policy to get approved. Then they draft out the first premium. If something happens in that next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then that person would not be covered. So that is important. If you want to give the conditional receipt, which I'll go over in just a second, I didn't go over that yet, then this will need to be filled out for that. Okay, so that's kind of a high-level overview on how to fill out these applications. There are a few other things I'm going to touch on, that I have seen hold applications up, so it's really good to keep in mind. The first one is this payer and owner. Recently, American-Amicable sent out a notification saying that the payor cannot be a third party unless it's a spouse or uh, if the parent is paying for a child that's under 25 years old. So if they are over 35, the only payor could be either a spouse or themselves. I actually just had an agent that just got an application declined last week because she was 30 years old and she was still living at her parents' house, and her dad was paying for the policy, and everything else was fine, but it got declined because her dad was paying for it. So if she was listed on her dad's bank account, then it's okay. So if he can add her to the policy or the bank account, then that would be okay. Um, Beneficiaries is another one. You can list out multiple beneficiaries. So if they want to have 2 or 3 as the primary, you can list those out. If it's more than 2 or 3, you may have to go to the next page. But just make sure that you put the percentage of each that each person will get, and the percentages need to equal 100%. So if you have, let's say, 3 people, you need to have one at 33%, another one at 33%, and then the third one needs to be at 34%. If you put them all at 33%, that adds up to 99%, and that will hold up the policy. Let's see, another one that is good to keep in mind. This question 5A, in the last 12 months, has a proposed insured consulted a medical professional. This one is not a bad one to put yes to. It's actually a really good one to put yes to. The underwriters really like to see people going to their doctor at least once a year. So if they visited their doctor in the last 12 months, you want to put yes there. And then under this section down here, all you would have to put is annual checkup, results were normal, or results were good. And you can list out the more details that you give. If you need more details, there's a notes, comments field right here. The more details you can give, the better. Even if it's as simple as they take an aspirin once a day or a couple times a week, anything like that, or they saw a doctor because of a sprain. The more details you can give, the better. That way the underwriter knows that you're not holding anything back. And you'll be surprised how fast a policy can get approved. We've had policies get approved within 24 hours just because they listed everything on there, versus other ones that are very vague. They're going to want to see more medical records, or those types of things can really hold things up if you're not putting good detailed notes on the applications. You may even want to ask if they've been prescribed medications, any medications in the last 4 to 5 years. Things like any painkillers or antibiotics or anything like that you could put in this section, because those underwriters will see those prescriptions, and there are things that they're going to question. If you haven't written them down, then they're going to wonder, what are those for? If they've had a painkiller, they're going to know why they had that painkiller. Then you're going to have to call the client back, find out why they had the painkiller, and it really can delay the process. So if you can get that information up front, it's really going to speed things up. Let's see, section D. This is also a section that you want to make sure is completely filled out. Some people don't put their occupation down there. That's going to be a red flag. One thing that will disqualify people from the home protector is if they are disabled. And if they're not putting their occupation on there, that's going to be the first thing the underwriter is going to want to think is this person employed, or are they disabled? Are they receiving disability? And that will disqualify them from this application. So definitely put the occupation down there. Employer's name and address, many times they will just kind of verify that they are employed and not disabled. So you definitely want to keep that, make sure that's filled in. And then for those of you, and I apologize if some of this um, is obvious, because I know some of you are going to know this, but just to cover that for those that are a little unclear, the transit number and routing number or account number, those can be found on the bottom of the check that you get. The routing number will be the bottom left number. It's a 9-digit number. And then the account number will be kind of in the middle of that check. So make sure that you put those numbers down here. This request draft date, there's a reason I leave that blank. You want that if you leave that blank, then they will draft it upon approval. You can change it once it's in place. And the reason I do that, and not, let's say it's the 2nd of the month and they want it drafted on the 1st of every month. They're gonna have to wait almost an entire month before they're gonna be able to draft out that premium, and that is gonna delay when the policy gets enforced, and it's gonna delay when you get your commission. So when a client wants to have a specific day, I let them know that they're gonna draft this upon approval, and we can change that once the policy is in force. So if you want to get paid quick and you want this policy to go through quick, just go ahead and leave that blank, and that can be updated after the policy is in force. And last, actually a couple more things. If there is a policy replacement, one of the questions on this application is this policy being replaced? Right here, do you intend to replace or change existing life or disability with this policy? And the answer is no. If they are replacing, then call your mentor and find out exactly what needs to be done, because it's a little bit of a complicated process. They actually are going to have to send a letter to their existing insurance company and make sure that that policy gets closed as this one's getting approved, and it really can slow down the approval process. Many times it makes a little bit more sense to go ahead and get this policy in place, make sure they're going to get approved, make sure the rates are as applied for, and then if the client at that point wants to cancel his other policy, he can do that. But just make sure that if he is just going to do a straight up replacement, that you get a hold of your mentor and find out the exact process to do that. And the last thing is the conditional receipt. The first thing, received from, this is who is paying for it. This is how much, let's say it's $55 a month, who paid that to you? And so you're going to put the payor's name here. Most of the time it's the same as the insured. The next question is proposed insured. So if there was a different, let's say it's the husband is paying for for his wife, then you'd put the husband here and the wife's name here. Most of the time the payor and the insured are going to be the same people. And then the date, and then your name here. And this is what you will leave behind with the client, along with the terminal illness, disclosure, and I think there's one other one. There's another copy of the HIPAA authorization. So any of those disclosure statements you do leave behind with the client, along with this conditional receipt. All right, that pretty much explains everything about this policy or this application. If you guys have any further questions, just get with your mentor and he'll be happy to answer any detailed questions that I didn't cover here. Thanks a lot, guys.